are most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Prophet Isaac, please introduce yourself a bit to us.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amy. I really appreciate the time to spend with you today. My name is Isaac Andoh, and I'm graced to operate in the prophetic grace. I'm a second degree holder in divinity, which is basically about God and human relation. So it's centered on how our belief system is. And also my first degree was in applied chemistry, biochemistry, so you could actually see the catch.
I don't see the catch. I don't see the link between chemistry and divinity.
So basically, yeah, this is one of the things that I usually have, like when I say, can you see the catch? No, I believe that God is a chemist, God actually is a chemist, because our body system is made up of atoms and these atoms join together to form the human being. So the molecules in us, the blood vessels in us, they all come together to form us. So then if I'm saying that the catch in it, that means that God actually know how to cause the cosmos with all the particles to come together to form humans.
Now I'm confused. It seems like I'm in a chemistry class. Cosmos, blah, 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 blood, God.
Yeah, so
yes.
that is actually what whet my appetite into studying about God's relation with man, and that's why it ended me in divinity. So they have some correlation, if you ask me.
I'm trying to be convinced. What more can you tell us about you?
I'm also married to a very beautiful and gorgeous woman, Monica Andoh, M.A. Yeah. And then we are
M.A. in divinity.
That is the short form of it.
I'm just kidding. Okay.
Oh, she's not studying divinity. I call it the pole of our time, blending law and faith together. She's an amazing personality, and I bless God for her life.
We thank God for that. Yes. And so today we are going to discuss about Christianity and among Black people more broadly, let's put it like that. And I think we would zoom into Christianity being like a perception or the idea that Christianity is a Western notion, and it was brought by the white man to us Black people. What would you say about that?
Oh, this is one of the amazing things that coming to Europe and studying, it was laid on my heart to actually ask questions concerning Christianity and the concept of it. Just recently, I heard that most of the people in Africa, especially the skeptics, they are using this to persuade a lot of people that, Christianity is a white man's religion, a white man to say that it's Western religion, mostly not from even Europe, from America, and then the so-called, let me put it in quotes, the white men, like when they talk about the Western world, mostly they are talking about America and the rest of them. So I was like, come on, this particular thing can't be really so, because if
why can't it be so?
Yeah,
at least some of us grew up seeing Jesus' image as a white man.
With some nice.
I told you
that Jesus is very romantic.
That Jesus, most of us saw it in our homes, or even I remember barber shops, salons, many places.
Yeah, it's true. And then mostly they connected to colonization of Africa. They normally say
as well.
Yeah, slavery. So they normally say that the white man brought. There's even some poet that say the ship that brought the Bible to Africa is the same ship that brought the schnapps and the wines for us to drink. So. So basically, is it so that the white man brought Christianity to Africa, or Africa has an existence, or actually the existence of Christianity was actually brought to us by the Western people? I would say that I'll say this in twofold. So, concept of the whites bringing the gospel, or probably starting Christianity in Africa, we ask ourselves, which are the white? Mostly the Asians are not referred to as white people, or probably they are referred as Asians, you know. So we basically know that Asians are not, to say in quote, white people, you know. When we talk about white people, we are mostly talking about the Western people and some groups. So the question is, did the Europeans actually brought Christianity to Africa? That is what people can debate about. But if I start from the US, which is now mostly known to be the center of, you know, Christianity for most people in Africa, which is not true, because if you look even in history, there is no country in Africa basically that was colonized by the Americans. I don't know about it, but I bet to differ to say that specifically there were some countries that were actually colonized by the Americans, then when before Christianity has not even started in Africa.
So, to be clear,
Yeah.
we are talking about white man's religion, so to speak. Are you telling us that in Africa, most of us, the Christianity that we think came from the West, we think came from America?
Yes.
We assume it came from America.
And sometimes from Europe, which is even false. So now, if I should broaden it, let's even talk about Europe in a sense. So Christianity from Africa did not actually come from Europe nor America.
So it
actually came from Asia, if you ask me.
Which part of Asia?
Good. That is the question. I can't tell specifically part of Asia, but I know that in after the death of Christ, 60 years after the death of Christ, one of the evangelists, that is the Apostle Mark, what they call the evangelist Mark, 60 years after the death of Christ, actually came to Egypt, the Mediterranean Sea. If you look at the map of Africa, Asia to Egypt is actually not very far. So he actually came to Egypt, and that is when he actually started preaching Christ to them. So, was the church for everybody? That is where people actually misunderstand. So 60 AD, that was the same time Christianity was also starting in North Europe. So is it possible that Africans, that is in Egypt, knowing clearly about Christ, then you tell us that it actually started from Europeans who came to colonize Africa, which is, the colonization even started somewhere in 14, after maybe 1,400 years later, after the Apostle Mark came to Africa.
In the one we know, white people enslaved black people. But people would say that, okay, if this even preceded, the Europeans played a big role in it.
I would say yes and no. The reason why I will say yes and no, I'll come to that. Because when the Apostle Mark came, the Christianity then was not for the second class people. Let me use the word second class people, because it was a merchandise ministry. When I talk about the merchandise ministry, I'm meaning that they were trading. So this person comes and sell, let's say, shoes or clothes in Africa, and then African people will buy that clothes in return gold or with silver to get money. So through that, they established contact with the kings and the people of high class, because if you don't have money, you cannot trade. And then Apostle Mark used that opportunity to begin to spread the gospel to them, talk about Christ to them. So the church they actually established a church. The church they established actually was for only the first class people. So if you're a poor person, you cannot go to the church. You cannot fellowship in the church, because it has to deal with people with money. You know, although the church was not centered on money, but it has to deal with people that have the capital. Because if you are going with excuse me, it's a rugged cloth, you are seen as, what is it doing? And then this whole Christianity concept is not for, and that is how it started. That is the beginning of Christianity in Africa. So, Christianity in Africa was for the elite. It's not for any other people. And it generated, so if you look at even the trend in the UK, and the whole concept about King James writing the Bible, which is not true.
King James Version,
it's a translation, but people say he wrote the Bible. And even King James himself did not translate it. People actually did it. And then they have to put the king's name on it because the king wanted to read the Bible and understand it. If you look at them, they even established the Church of England, which is modern day the Church of the Anglican Church. You see it? So it was also a church for the elite, so that the king and his people will be able to fellowship, so that they won't because the ministry, the church itself or Christianity itself was for the elite. So they also didn't want to mingle up with those in Africa to show that, this is the elite in Africa and then we are the elite here. So they wanted to create their own empire for themselves, because then Rome too has started the believing in Christ. And they have also established churches then in Rome. And then it was also for the empire, the what do you call it? The Caesars. Then it was also only for them. So they gather and fellowship, and these people gather and fellowship. So they were creating those contention especially in rulership. And Christianity played a very much important role in leadership. They had a very much important role in leadership. So that is how Christianity started. So Europeans started their own Christianity. Africans started their own Christianity. And even to say, the British also started their own Christianity.
So if different people in different parts of the world started their own Christianity, still the roots is to Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if the roots is to Christ, where is Christ from?
Amazing question.
Whoa. Because the question is Christianity the white man's religion? We can argue that no, it's for everyone, because people from different parts of the world did start it. Mm-hmm. But the idea that Christ is a white man, Christ was perhaps, like now you're saying, Christianity started more for the elites, the rich, the entrepreneurs, the businessmen. And that also plays into the idea why people would think that it has something to do with slavery, because the slave authorities, I don't want to use masters, kind of wanted to conquer places. So they will use Christianity and all those things. So so that's why I'm like, so this Christ, where is he from?
Okay. So I'll back off your question a bit and come back into it. If we talk about slave masters using Christianity as a tool, we'll come to that point. But then we should also notice that slavery started about maybe 1,000 years after Apostle Mark actually Evangelist Mark came to Africa to establish the early church. And even churches were established in Ethiopia as well. I think 328 AD, after the death of Christ, 328 years later, they established a church in Ethiopia, which is the Orthodox Church in Ethiopia. And then it was also a Christian place. Ethiopia has not been colonized by any country in the world. They have been Ethiopia since then till now. But then, how do we coordinate this? To come back to your question, is Christ actually from any country? The question is, if we are looking for where Christ is from, then I would say his physical birth will be somewhere in Asia, close to Africa. And then because of his genealogy from his patrilineal and matrilineal side, as Apostle Luke accounted for it. However, Christ is not born specifically of the normal nature as we were born, like a mother and father, But this is actually a spiritual birth that came to the physical by a woman getting pregnant, although it was a growth. Like even if it is a science world today, we will call it a tumor that grew to a human being, because it's not possible to have a baby without a man. So it actually came to that point. So I won't say Christ is actually of a specific race, because he actually said it, he is all for all. But then there is a claim that says that the Israelites are actually people of God. In a way, God chose them. And let me borrow a word from a wise man that recently spoke on social media. He said that Christianity in Asia was a relationship. And I will explain that more as we go on. Christianity in Africa
was a relationship
Yes.
with whom? With God.
With God.
Okay.
When Christianity came to Africa, from Asia to Africa, it becomes spirituality. It was spiritual with God, because it saw God not as just a leader of a country. Because God took Israel and he was the king of Israel before he established Saul. God was ruling Israel from heavens. He was ruling Israel and earth. It's because anytime that he wanted to speak, he called his prophet and said, "Go and tell my people." He called Israel my people. And God actually, through time when Christ came, we all also connected to God as his people. Now Israel is physically God's people, but then spiritually we are all Israelites when we come to Christ. Apostle Paul stated it. We are now connected to Christ as people of Abraham, or the seed of Abraham, by covenant, which is Christ. So Israel is now broader than a nation. So when Christianity got to Africa, the man of God says that Christianity became spiritual. It was no longer just a relationship, but spirituality. And we will get to that as time goes on.
Yes, because I really want to understand how
the transition is.
How like Christianity becomes spiritual, because a spiritual journey can also be a relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would like, as you said, we will explore that in depthly to understand how I can have a relationship with a spiritual being, because I see God as my father.
Yeah.
And so I have that relationship.
Good.
So we will discuss that. So I don't think I'm convinced that Christianity is a black man's religion.
It's not actually a black man's religion.
Okay. So it's
neither is it a white man's religion. If you ask me the geographical religious times, then I will link it to Asia.
Okay.
Because that is when Christ actually that is when most of the apostles lived, before they even started a church in North Europe. And then if we are looking at it from the point of slavery, and that is the bone of contention now. Most people say slavery brought Christianity to Africa, which is not true. Because slavery started somewhere after, 1,000 years after the apostles, 1,000 years after churches were established in Africa. One of the things that I would like us to explore when time comes, like some time to come, what is actually the borrowed religion in Africa? We will see that the religion that we are calling the African traditional religion is actually a borrowed religion. It has nothing to do with African belief, or that this is African belief. Africa never had belief. Our belief was in culture, working hard and tilting the land and getting the good from the land. That was our belief. We have no genealogy with like the gods that we serve. It was actually a borrowed religion. We will talk about that with time.
Then there's a lot to really talk about, because I have 2,000 questions to ask.
So going back to the concept of Christianity in Africa, whether it's a white man, let me throw more light into it. One, we should know that the evangelist Mark is not from the West.
But we don't know, like, if I say we, many people, many laymen many people in Africa,
Yeah.
we don't even know or haven't really heard much about this evangelist.
Yes, yes.
So how do we even associate it to this? So it's also the information that is passed on to us. So if I am a Christian,
Yeah.
and I know that, let's say, I worship with, I don't want to mention a particular church's name, and I'm told this is the roots, this is where the church started from. This person came from, let's say, Europe,
Yeah.
or Rome, or America, or Pennsylvania, to be very specific, and established this. I would say this church, when I'm talking about this church's history, I will link it to that person, because that's what I've been told, and that's what I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. History has a place in our lives, and it plays much essential point in our lives as well. What we are being told is what we actually live on. But then the thing is, have we discovered it by ourselves? I was also told that actually Christianity is a white man's religion. And I believe it. And the white man, I mean Western religion. And I believed it all this while until I read something in scripture. And I want us to read it.
Okay.
And it actually pushed my attention to actually
I
know.
brought my Bible.
Oh.
So when you open, I have to see before you read.
Okay. Acts chapter.
No, you can read it.
Okay.
My Bible is downstairs.
I would like you to even read for our listeners. And sorry, I didn't even say hi to our listeners. I was so caught up in this topic. Let's read this. Acts chapter 2, read from verse 5. Do you need your glasses?
No, I don't.
Read from verse 5 coming
eyes.
down, then we will actually see it.
Now there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews,
Yeah.
devout men from every nation under heaven.
Yeah.
And at this sound the multitude came together, and they were bewildered, because each one was hearing them speak in his own language.
Yeah.
7. And they were amazed and astonished, saying, Are not all these who are speaking Galileans?
Yeah.
And how is it that we hear each of us in his own native language? Parthians and Medes and Elamites and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome,
Okay.
both Jews.
You can end it up there. So we take notice of something. Libya and then Egypt. So if we want to break this down, we have Europe, Asia, and Africa. And this story is about when the Holy Spirit broke through in the day of Pentecost. And the disciples were there, the 12 disciples. Christ was gone and they had gathered praying. And that was the first time Apostle Peter came out to evangelize, and 3,000 people. And it is telling us that these 3,000 people that heard the gospel for the first time were included only 3 continents, which Americans were not part. There was no American continent in there. It was Asia, it was Africa, it was Europe. So can we say that the first gospel, I hear the first gospel from Christ from Africa, and now we come and hear that Christianity was brought, the gospel was brought to us by the Westerners? How? Africans were mentioned clearly here, Egypt and Libya. They were present in that time, the festival of Pentecost. They were there. They were actually people from Africa. So how is it possible then to turn the story around? And I'm going to mention we may not have knowledge about these people because probably we are not theologians, but in the circles of theology, there are some respected men that people actually honor. And the notion of these men is that they are from Europe. And it's not true. They are all from Africa. And we will say it today. So there is not possible for the Bible to tell us the day of Pentecost, that was the birth of the church. The time the church started, which Africans were witness of this church. Then the story is changed that the Westerners, the Europeans, that we were part of them, that when the church began, now they tell us they brought the gospel to us. But tell me, how is it possible? Logically.
So we were there.
Yeah.
And you are mentioning Libya and Egypt.
Yeah.
And I am a black woman. So I'm going to be a bit controversial here and say, Egyptians and Libyans, we understand that they are in Africa. They are from Africa.
Yeah.
Are they black people?
Of course they are.
Do they identify themselves as black?
Okay. I can identify myself as a Dutch, but I'm a black person. And
yes, I don't dispute the fact that they are
black.
Africans.
Good.
But are they black people?
So the concept of Africa, Africa is for black people. Because the Egyptians that you are talking about, they are not white-skinned people.
They are what?
It's like they are brown-skinned.
Browns?
Yeah, let me call them browns. Because if you look at there are changes that has occurred throughout the years. So sometimes when we see them, they look like the more of Asian people. But they were described, if you look at Herod of that time, or the kings of that time, they look African. And if you look at the pyramids, all those drawings, they are really dressed African. So as generation trade went on, the blending of it, some Egyptians are really black-skinned people.
I don't dispute that.
I
just want us to have this discussion that anyone who may have this perception that, and even think that anyone from Libya or anyone from Egypt is, for lack of better word, it's not black. Let me put it that way, because I was going to say brown or not white, or
exactly.
I don't know the right word to do to say.
Yeah. So they are actually not white people to the white to say that they have this. We presume that white people have blue eyes and long hair. European had hairs like the skin of lambs and sheep.
Which people? Egyptians?
The Egyptians, Egyptians. They have their hairs like that. And the white people, they don't know. Now they are even trying to, model that. And some of them have black skin. Of course, nature can let somebody have a white skin. But then some of them have black skin. And as time goes on in trade, remember it's merchandising that it was business that was connecting them, and they were also getting married to people that came from the merchandising. So culture blending, and then they began to grow. And still, there are some part of them that are black, there are some part of them that are white. We cannot take that from them.
We aren't actually. They are Africans. Africa is big.
Yes.
And we have to look at the south, north, west, and eastern.
Exactly.
A lot of people say Africans. We need to unite and stop this kind of discrimination and all that. But I just felt like it's good for us to point it out, because someone may be sitting and be listening to us and be one, they don't know that Libyans are not black or something. So that was the reason why I did that detour. But I'm still going to say that though you've noted that Libyans were there, Egyptians were there, and you talked about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the roots of it, and you've also made it clear that Christ, if we look at how, you're a scientist, so how Christ was born, you're a pure scientist. Christ was born. We can also say that Christ is from this place, from that place, and I think it makes a lot of sense for us. But if we are still not convinced as black people, and we ask ourselves if it isn't really a white man's religion, what is it, and who actually made it so big? Because when we talk about religion among especially we black people, sometimes it's like people are telling you embrace your roots, and you are taking white people's religion as yours, and all those. It can be very, very confusing, and so that's why we need to really break down so that people who have questions and have been asking themselves so many times, am I taking up someone's culture? Let me put it that way.
So Christianity again is not a white man's culture. And Africans are not taking white man's culture. Let me point the concept of God even broader. Before even colonization, and I think we will come to that point where we talk about colonization, and is it true that colonization was a tool for slavery? Christianity was a tool for slavery. We will also come to that. But then to hit on this question, African had the concept of God before even the European came. You know, we had a myth that when we were growing up, when the reason why God went up to, which was actually a myth, through a very nice myth, that we are pounding fufu and then the pistol was hitting God and God was telling us stop, if you don't stop out, then God actually went to the clouds, all these were myth. And he was telling the concept of God in Africa back then. He was telling us how were African worshipping. The question is, were they actually sacrificing to the God? They believed that there was a supreme being and they were sacrificing to the God. Where was this concept coming from? Remember, in the Old Testament, what were the people doing? The priests annually they go and then sacrifice to God. They kill bulls and that was what Africans were doing. So it was actually something that was passed through the genes biologically. Nobody actually spoke to Africans about concept of God. They believed that God existed. By culture, they believed that there was a supreme being. By nature, they believed that there was a supreme being. But to call it Christianity, that was what was not there. So the white people that actually came through slavery actually had to help us, especially those of the West Africa. Because when we're also migrating from our mother places in the other African countries, Africa migrated from somewhere in Cameroon, and then the Asian Angola also. I stand to be corrected on that. I don't have too much fact on that. But they migrated from Cameroon in some place in Asian Angola. Because they were calling it Ango Cameroon or something like that. And they came to the West and they brought gods. I told you that this was the gods that they brought was actually the ones they borrowed.
Why do you think they borrowed it?
Dr. Amy, if I come to your house, let's do some analysis. If I come to your house and you have a book, and I found out that this book is actually pleasant, maybe by C.S. Lewis, and I saw this book, I said, oh, I love to read about C.S. Lewis, and I take it. And I take it to my country somewhere in Takwa in Africa, and I start reading. And I bring out a concept of that book. Okay, C.S. Lewis said that this and this and this and this. The story of Narnia, and then I speak to my people, and they begin to spread it. Where is it coming from? The book is actually coming from you here in Europe. I borrowed the book to Africa, and I changed it to be something of my own. Is it not still borrowed? You are just transforming something you borrowed.
It's not borrowed, it's appropriated. But I still do not get it that traditional religion was borrowed. Okay. If we would be I don't want us to go much into it, but if we say it was borrowed, then we have every reason to ask ourselves, so what were the people doing then before traditional religion?
So before traditional
religion, or before something that we call traditional religion?
Yes, before something we call traditional religion. Traditional religion was actually a concept that was the secret behind was seeking of power and rulership. That was the secret behind, let's say, African traditional religion. The concept of power and rulership. And remember, we have the Greek gods. We have the god of tender, the god of riches, the god of sun, the god of the moon, the god of light. These were Greek gods. And it was what we call the pagan worship. And this same pagan worship was what Egyptians shifted to. The Egyptian was also having the concept of Baal, the pagan worship, the Isis, the Iris, and then the god of the sun, the god of the moon. Similarly, some to the Cameroonians, they also have the god of the sun, the god of the moon, the god of the light. And so if Africans were the other Africans that were migrating from these people, they carried this concept with them. And their own motive of it was, we are going to get, because if the god of the sun, I command the sun to stop so that my crops will grow. I command the light to shine so that my crops, so everything was for them to prosper and for them to increase and gain power over the others, especially when colonization started. To just gain power. So the concept of African traditional religion was for power and for rulership. That was the concept of it. So when they were coming along, they had to bring some of these gods along with them, because it is then kept in them that this is the God that we have. And if I give birth and I am a Christian and my child comes, I'm serving God, and then oh, my father has a God. Then he picks my God when he's going to maybe school in Asia, and then started forming some cult group there, and then they started saying, okay, this is our God. But actually, it wasn't what Africans believed in. Africans believed in hard work and production. And that was actually what caught the Europeans' attention to start colonization in Africa.
So, Africans believe in hard work.
Yeah.
And I think there is no place I've gone to that they don't say that Africans are very hard work. But if that caught Europeans' attention in Africa, and they knew that we were hardworking, and there is this perception that Africans are, or black people are very strong, and so they can be used on the plantations. A lot of people also say that there was a way that the Europeans had to convince us mentally to break us down, to be able to make use of our hard work and our strength.
Yes. And that is when they brought, good question. I like this question that you've asked. It's drawing my attention to two things. Colonization actually has a method, because the Bible says you cannot go to a strong man's house and begin to tie them unless you are stronger than them. The white people saw that they are not stronger than us, so they have to bring out something that can connect us to them. So I spoke about Christianity in Africa starting through merchandising. So the slave masters, I use a nice word, I don't also want to use it because they are not masters.
Authority.
The slave authority that actually came devised two standards. One was the standard of merchandising. They were coming to do trading, because they knew we believe in trading, because we are hardworking, we have production, we have gold, we have silver, which we're not using for anything. The gold, we can find out some gold at our backyard. If today we find gold at our backyard, it would have been nice. That we were not using, it was so abundant that we were not using for anything. And we were thinking about crops, production, and the rest of the things. And these are things that was important for us, not the gold and silver. And they also saw something in this gold and silver. And then what we believe in. So now trade and what we believe in. So if it was true that Christianity has actually not existed in Africa, why would they come to us in what we believe in? That's the question we should ask ourselves. Two, if they knew that we believe in gods and we have smaller gods, they could have actually brought the Greek gods, the rest of them. They should we also believe in these gods, and they would try, and it would have been a nice way for them to colonize us, because if we share the same kind of belief, if we are pouring libation, if we are doing the same sacrifices, it would have been a very nice way.
But there is also the idea that they actually came to break our belief system, in that those who were early converts of Christianity, that is where we were, were people that had issues in our societies.
Yes.
Because in some societies, they when you were a thief, what they would do to you, when you like all kinds of for lack of better misfits, became early converts.
Yes.
And those people were those who started these churches and actually broke communities and created confusion. So how would you say that they could have brought the Grigors? But rather, maybe they were looking for something that was easy and accessible to them, because perhaps those, I can take Ghana for example, those who came there for colonialism and enslavement, they were not from, they were no Greeks, let me put it that way, because the history is long and we know that Portuguese came, the Dutch came, and then UK also. So this was what they had. Can we also say that they came with what they had and they convinced those that they felt could easily, like, because they will also have problems with their community, so they're like, if you have problems with your community, come here, there's ahead.
Those times not hanging. Those times when you're coming to Europe, your mindset is about they are going to catch me for slavery. But the fact is, I like this trend because one, the Christianity has not then even grown much in Europe. We should not forget about that. It has not actually flourished much more in Europe, because they themselves they were even struggling with there were them battles between Christians and the people of high places, the pagans. No, they were actually battling with them. So Apostle Paul makes certain claims to the Europeans, especially in his letters, and the ones that he wrote to Ephesians. It was encouraging them about the faith, that they should stand in the faith and they shouldn't give up to the pagans. They were actually persecuting Christians then in Europe.
So maybe because they were persecuting
they were running to Africa.
in Europe, they were like, let's find where we can go and we too go and persecute them and make them suffer and put them in danger. Because I actually, when I go to Elmina Castle and Cape Coast Castle, at least those castles in Ghana, and I see the kind of lifestyle that the governors and people spells like, they were really having the luxury of life at the expense of black people. So maybe because they were being persecuted here, they were like, let's go somewhere and also go and torment these people, give them hell and have our heaven on earth there.
The merchants were not Christians, they were not believers, they were pagan worshippers. Most of the merchants. So they came along with missionaries. That is the difference. So I'm coming to do my merchandising. I want to spread the gospel. And a team have become.
So it was a teamwork then?
Actually, it could be a teamwork, but it could be a means for them to, because one of the things that the negative side of it is what I'm going to say. One of the things that actually was helping then was that the missionaries were teaching the language of the Westerners to the people. That is, if we should talk about that. So it was helping them to communicate well in trading. They were also,
the missionaries were teaching the language.
Yes, the language of the traders, like the slave authority.
You see why I'm not convinced about this clear distinction? Because it was a teamwork. So how would the missionaries be able to preach or teach the people the language, and then the traders, they had a role. Come on. they were they paying the missionaries? I mean, I'm sure some were doubling as traders commissioners. You cannot convince me.
We cannot actually say per fact that some of them were doubling us. But the downside of it is when the culture of the Westerners were passed down to us. The missionaries were actually preaching to us in order to grow civilization.
That even word civilization bores me to the bone.
Let's not talk about that now. Yeah. So they were actually trying to put the thought of civilization, and they felt that they were, as I said, the Christianity then was for the elite. So they were trying to create that break that bridge between the elite and the second class people. And by so doing, that is when they had to bring the missionary, because if they were trading with only the high class people, they can't get a lot of stuff from them, because the grassroots people, some political terms, the grassroots people are the people that actually know what is on ground. So they also wanted to expand in their trade. And of course, greed sets in. And we shouldn't forget, sometimes I say that slave trading was not just like they entered Africa and stuff. Of course, 25% of trading was they captured the people by force. But 75% of their trading was they bought these people. It was a lateral or bilateral agreement that was established between families, because they want to get the people to work. So we shouldn't just always blame them for, hey, they came to cut our people, and then, and one day I heard that a Nigerian went to the British Museum and then went and took something there and said, this was for our forefathers.
Maybe he's right.
And they sold it to them.
It's not everything that was stolen. Some of them were stolen, and some of them were captured. So maybe the one he went for was one of the stolen things.
Yeah. So as we are talking about this, it's one of the things that we should also look at very well. So the thought of the missionaries.
But I want to come back to this. I think we need a lot of time to digest this. And so please, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section, because we have to let Prophet Isaac answer all the questions we have. So we are convinced that Christianity is black man's religion, or it was not brought by the white, and it was not a means to enslave us and mentally capture us. So if you have any question, please put it in the comment section. But I want to come back to the idea that most people, it was collaboration between families. But I want to differ and say that as I sit here and someone comes with a gun and is about to kill me and say, hand me Prophet's laptop. Trust me, the way I'll throw the laptop to him, I might do it with the intent of saving my life and later deal with the repercussions. So, would you say people willingly gave their families out?
Sure.
This is very, very, very complicated.
Yeah, sure.
And we will discuss this later, because it's something that I'm really, really curious and intrigued about. Yes.
Yeah. People actually gave their family out to the slave authorities, if we should say, because then they began to, the quest to get rich, the quest to get new things in their lives was what they were looking at. No, they were not looking at the how they will be treating these people, how they will be letting them feel like, because then the notion of, and don't forget that these people also came with a bit of deception. I mean, the trade authorities.
So that is the deception that a lot of people are saying. Don't like those distinctions are so confusing. These were the same people who were traders and missionaries, and
the missionaries, Dr. Amy, let's create a distinction here. The missionaries were not traders. They were in Africa, and there was some negative side that I will talk about. Let me chip that in before it escaped me. They actually brought their culture in our Christianity. You know, when you go to these Orthodox churches, they don't play keyboard, they don't clap their hands. And we African, we have certain kind of drums that we play. We are enjoying ourselves with our kitty dance and the rest. Yeah, they said that these ones were all demonic, and it caused demons and stuff. And I like this was actually the divisions that came in the African church. Then, so we will have time and talk about the division enough. Then you will actually see that this missionaries, they were not merchant. They carried the concept of spreading the gospel throughout the world. That was their thought of coming, and also civilization.
But if you put in the idea that they came together with the traders, then there is some even if I struggle to make that distinction between traders and missionaries, I'm like, you came together, you did this together.
So you planned it.
You are the same. But even if I want to buy into the idea that there are two different groups of people who are they were collaborating, they were working together.
I might say,
and sometimes, I'm sure they use force, like
to let the people believe. Oh, with that, I would say they didn't actually force Ghanaians, or probably Africans. I don't want to use Ghanaians because then slave trade was all over Africa, and in Christianity establishing. If you talk about the West. Of course, if you talk about the west part of Africa, then Christianity was actually, seems like a white man religion, because then the missionary came in. Those countries, those places were established later down African name. So we can actually argue for the fact that they actually helped in the spreading of Christianity in West Africa. Yes, okay. But then we cannot say that they established it there. That one we cannot actually say emphatically, because they had a certain forms of belief before they came. And having said this, Africa themselves had this. The earlier thing was they have this concept, of actually protecting their own and having them protected. So the white people, the merchants, actually, they came to trade. An example: if you want to pick me from, let's say when you came to even pick us from our house to this place, the car was not ours. It was a carrier. Mm-hmm. And then you brought us together. Does it mean that we are together?
We were together.
We were together, but does it mean that we are going to carry the same agenda? Of course, we had it that we are going to have a meeting today. Yes. But then, do we
carry the same agenda? That we are all going to this place. Yeah. We are going to have a meeting.
Yeah.
And perhaps at some point you will be like, I'm not going to talk about, let's say, food. I'm going to talk about religion.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about Africa.
Yes.
But the whole idea is that we are coming to this place. At some point, if I don't know here very well, I'll ask you.
Yes.
And if you don't know here, you ask me.
Thank you.
And perhaps you also see that.
So there could be some communities, but then I won't say specifically that they carry the same agenda. Because the agenda of the missionaries was to spread the gospel to the rest of the people and civilization.
So who asked them to come and spread that?
And now, one of the fascinating things, now the table has turned. Mm-hmm. If you look at Europe and the Western world right now, it is the people from the countries of Africa that are actually spreading Christianity in Europe. Having said that, the whole concept of Christianity, even spreading in Europe, theologically, was actually aided by Africans. They were aided by Africans. So it is not
in recent times.
It was not in recent times. In about 320 something ADs, it was aided by Africans. Yeah.
How?
Okay. Now I'm getting your attention.
You had my attention since we started this conversation, but you have to convince me.
Okay, good. So, when the empires, the Constantine started to actually make Christianity a state religion, there were theologians there that were actually having trained by the apostles. Some of them had a close contact with apostles. I won't be able to say that Augustine and Tertullians and the rest have, but they formulated certain doctrines that we believe now, and these are all Africans. Their parents were Africans. They live in the part where it was called the north of Africa. Those times was called Algeria also, and then they were actually under Rome. So they were paying tribute to Rome. So they had certain name, the Roman North Africa also. They were paying tribute to Rome. So in a sense, they were actually paying taxes to Rome, but it was Africa. You know, this whole expansion of territory was in the other days. If they actually come, they get your land, and these were Africa. And these theologians, one, Augustine of Hippo. Everybody in the theological cycle know about Augustine and the things that he has written about salvation, about sin. Some of these concepts is what we use to today. Was from Africa. They trained him in
They
Africa.
trained him.
Yes.
Who are they?
Their parents.
He's trying to convince me.
Their parents of Augustine. They trained him in Africa. And he started writing some of his writings even from Africa. So then he got access to Europe because they were paying tribute to Europe. So in a sense, he was African Roman. So then he can get access to be treated as a somebody from Roman. So in a sense, he's like having that audacity to come to Europe and then do his argument and spread the gospel there. Another example is Tertullian. This man was Tertullian. That is what
I haven't heard this.
Tertullian. Okay.
Tertullian.
He's called Tertullian. The name is Tertullian. So, and this man was actually the man who brought the concept of Trinity.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's from Africa.
Okay. I'm going to read about Tertullian.
Read about
even the name I cannot mention.
So Tertullian was actually who brought the concept of the Trinity. Now he sat down to actually read the Bible, and he's South African. And
so he sat down to read the Bible.
The Bible.
And we are going back to the Bible. Where did he get the Bible from? And where is the Bible from?
Correct.
So this whole conversation, as you said, we have to get time and go step by step and explore it much further.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
I will appreciate that a lot. The Bible was not actually even from the West.
Where was it from?
It was from Asia.
It was from Asia. So still it's not even our.
But then we cannot it was not ours.
Because it's from Asia.
Yeah, it was not ours.
We still stand on the point.
Neither it was in the Western.
So it's not ours. So let's embrace ours then.
Okay, what was ours actually?
That's what I'm curious. So I would find if anyone knows much about African traditional religion, I'm happy for you to reach out to us and perhaps we'll have this discussion again and you put it to him because his wife is actually a lawyer.
So basically the Bible was actually an inspirational book from God. It was not. Let me retract my words and that saying that it was actually from Asia. No, the Bible was not from Asia itself. It was actually an inspired book by God that God gave to his people. If God has spoken a word that was written, it's not anybody's word. It was God's word that was penned down. So you cannot actually attribute it to any particular person that this person wrote it. They were all like they just translated and they discovered and it was written in Greek and in Hebrew. Hebrew was not a language. Sorry, Aramaic then was not even a language of the West. So there is no indication, not the Bible, not the people brought Christianity to Africa. It is actually the mind slavery to overcome Africans, because one of the things that they discovered is that any place that an African person is, they exploit. And you'll be shocked to know that when they even carry them in slavery, the break of Christianity even in America started with the Pentecostal Christianity in America started with the Azusa Street Revival and was begun by Africans. You know, the concept of it started this way. The missionary that was preaching to them, because when they took them there, the missionary was still preaching to them. Amazing, you know. And then they
are praising those missionaries too much.
I am not praising them, but I am actually giving credit to them for the good works they've done, not trading. They were not traders.
What's wrong with the traders?
The traders were actually the mean people, like, you know, that when I catch some of them, I'll take them to court. I'll let my wife help me to seal them.
And they are in trouble.
So basically, they were actually preaching to them about the Holy Spirit. And all of a sudden, the Spirit of God took control over. One of them, they began to speak in the language of the Spirit. And it was passed down to this person, passed down to this person. And they were praying. And these trained people were also beating them. They were maltreating them for having discovered the truth about the word of God. So you see, they were beating them in their country because of training. When they got there, they were still beating them because they have discovered the truth. So it can't be possible that the trader that does not even believe in what you believe will bring what you believe to you. How? There's no logic. It doesn't make sense. If you don't believe in what I believe, how do you bring it to me?
But at least for us who have been to some of the castles,
yeah,
we have seen where they worshipped God,
yeah,
above. So even if you as a trader, because you said definitely they came together, the traders and the missionaries, they were up there, they were worshipping God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the castles, I don't remember which one exactly, they had even written, this is where God lives, on top of where they worship. And there were people beneath, a small room, few people, and the traders whom the missionaries were, and the missionaries did not have, I'm sorry to use this word, the sense to tell the traders, even if they were different, that this is cruelty.
Yeah.
Because for me, I know that Christ came to deliver us from pain, from all that we are going through, and I'm worshiping with you above. And you see people wailing, crying, hunger, some dying, some being raped beneath you, and you couldn't tell the person that this is bad. Like, isn't it ridiculous? That's why it's difficult for me to be convinced that there were some missionaries somewhere and some traders somewhere.
Okay. You asked me a question and you used the laptop as an analogy when you said that if somebody rushed in here right now and with a gun and says that I should give this laptop to you, should give the laptop to you, or if not, you just throw it out, they were also preserving their lives. Remember, Christianity then was for the high class people. And these slave masters, the slave authorities saw the black people as second class people, which they couldn't associate with them. And the missionaries' work was to break that gap between Christianity seen as high class for the high class people and living the low class people. So they were gradually doing that. And they couldn't actually tend to, do that on the detriment of their lives. Because there were some of the missionaries, they were even killed for speaking up. We will actually talk about those missionaries that were actually killed by actually speaking up about true gospel, the love of Christ, to this merchant. And they said they were disrupting their business and they were killed. Yeah, they were killed and buried.
Okay. On this note, we would continue in our next discussion. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks for confusing me with chemistry and divinity. And yes, but I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so
And
much.
I'm sure there will be opportunity to discuss this further. But I'm also looking forward to questions from anyone who watches this video. If you have questions for Prophet, let me know. If you have questions for me, or you think I'm asking the right questions, let me know. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.